You're listening to Crossing Borders with ANYP for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANYPodcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Crossing Borders here with Always Next Year Podcast. I'm your host, Shane. I'm joined by my good friend from Canada, Connor. Connor, sir, how are you?
Good. And yourself?
I'm doing well. Connor, you got a new mic. You're sporting your new mic today. We have not yet installed and hooked up all of our mics, so at least one of us will sound good on this segment. So Crossing Borders, again, if you are new to us, we're just for the first few episodes of this show, we're going to remind everyone, so bear with us here. This is a show specifically for Philadelphia sports takes, the hottest debates that surround Philadelphia sports Twitter right now. These are what we dive into. Connor gives his takes on those takes. I give my takes on those takes. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Anytime you guys have takes, please feel free to use the hashtag CrossingBordersANYP. Send it over to either Connor, myself, or the @ANY podcast Twitter account. We will start responding to all of those just as soon as you start putting them in. But to kick things off today, we're going to start with a topic that right now is highly debated in Philadelphia Phillies Twitter, and that is, of course, Gabe Kapler and his use of the bullpen. I can't start this one because I think anyone who criticizes Kapler is a goddamn moron. So, Connor, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, well, I definitely feel the same way as you. I think we're beating a dead horse with this bullpen debate at this point. I mean, I don't know how many times I've come on this show and said we're top 5 in the NL and we're top 10 in the majors. But I guess the big thing that stands out is when they blow it, they really do blow it. But they don't blow it consistently like other teams like the Nationals, who have probably the worst bullpen in baseball.
Or that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. So I think the big thing here is it's just we're just beating a dead horse. It's a good bullpen, and you know what? I think the move for Velasquez is good. I think that just adds a whole different element to our bullpen now. If he can pitch 2 or 3 innings like he did the other night, like flawless, which obviously won't happen. It's Vinny V. But if he can attempt to pitch us a couple flawless innings, we are in a good spot in that bullpen, because that gives us that stretch guy that I don't really think we ever had. But I think, is Kapler too analytical sometimes? Yes. And I think as a baseball fan, and this analytics debate as it continues to rage on, it's frustrating as hell to watch the analytical process at play, because it does kind of make the game boring, and it does create situations where fans get extremely pissed off. I mean, it may work on paper, but it doesn't always work in the game. And I think that Gabe Kapler has to find that instance when to use it and when to just use his head, not play matchups, not play analytics. So my final take on this is our bullpen is in a lot better shape than the fans give it to be. And we just need to relax on this team and give them a chance. We have been first through all of this, and we are still first place in the NL East. Not that there's a whole lot of competition right now. But
the Braves are.
Exactly. They're there. They're 2.5, 3 games behind us every step of the way. So we're first place. We've been first place. We're still first place. And I think we will end up first place. It's just every time, they blow a game. They really blow a game. Or every time Harper goes 3 games without a home run, Phillies Twitter just blows up because they think that, Harper should have 162 home runs this year, and our bullpen should pitch flawlessly for 162 games. It's just not realistic.
So this all comes on the heels of an Ant San Philly tweet that we had found And the tweet itself is, "This is why Kapler deserves some blame for the bullpen. No reason to play in matchups in the sixth inning with a 5-run lead with your ace on the hill." And I believe Aaron Nola at the time was right around 90 pitches, 93 or so, I think, right when he came out of this. So naturally, these debates heighten, right, when a guy like Aaron Nola, when your ace is on the hill. But let's be honest, that game, Aaron Nola did not have his best stuff. He absolutely had to fight his way through every one of those 93 pitches. And that inning itself, I believe when he did come out, there was at least a runner on, if not two. I believe it was just a guy on first. I could be mistaken. But again, not his sharpest stuff. I believe that Kapler did make a read. Now, would I have made that same read at the time? We had like Ant said, we had a 5-run lead. Would I myself have done that? Probably not. But it goes in line with exactly the points that you brought. This bullpen has been top 5 in the NL almost the entire year, and he's doing that. Just listen to this now. He's doing that without Tommy Hunter, a guy who will take the baseball absolutely anytime you give it to him. Is he perfect? No, but he is the anti-Pat Neshek, so I goddamn love him. Pat Neshek, I don't even think we need to talk about that. That guy is a waste of space. As talented as he is, he's a waste.
That was embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing to talk about him right now, especially now that he's on the IL.
Naturally, which I think is bruised ego, not a shoulder soreness or whatever they're calling it. David Robertson, our big offseason acquisition this year for the bullpen. First of all, it wasn't great through the first couple weeks of the season. Then he got himself right, and then he got hurt. Victor Arano, a very consistent back-end piece, someone who was closing games out for us, IL. Ediboy Ramos, IL. He's doing that with essentially Hector Neris and Adam Morgan as the only two consistent pieces out of the pen. He's doing that with Seranthony Dominguez, who, I don't know if you heard this interview. This blows my mind. A professional pitcher who does not throw a knuckleball responded to a question from a reporter that says, "I do not know where my fastball is going when it leaves my hand." That means at 96, 97 miles an hour, because he's lost about a mile per hour off his fastball. I think it's 1.1 miles per hour from last year. In recent weeks, he's picked up. But his fastball, he doesn't know if it is going to cut, run, sink. He doesn't know what it's doing or if it's just going straight. That terrifies me. That pitch needs to set up a slider, which, by the way, is breaking 2 inches less than it did last year. He has not been as effective. What Gabe Kapler's doing with a bullpen that is essentially two guys and then hope to God that someone else can give you a handful of innings. We're pulling up Drew Anderson's and Enyel De Los Santos. We had Eichhoff out of the pen for a while. We got Vinny V in there now. By thought Pavetta at some point could end up in the bullpen as well. He's doing this, just mix and matching every single night. I think it's hard to get a feel on these things. It all comes down to me at the fact that, just like you said, right now, with what he has been putting every single pitcher, with the exception of maybe Nicasio, in a position to succeed. Nicasio has been a bit of the punching bag because he can be. He's not exactly a guy who's rattled. I don't know if you notice the same thing. But outside of that, he protects his starters. He protects his bullpen pieces. Even a guy like Neshek, who is basically a bruised vagina. You have these guys here always being put in a solid position by your manager. I think it's asinine that anyone in Philadelphia continues to criticize this part of Gabe. I think that he's made huge stretches in terms of finding a healthy balance between my analytical data that helped me prepare for this game suggests this, but the flow of this game is showing me something different. He's finding the right balance. Is it going to be a perfect science for him? Never. It will not be for any manager in baseball, but he's done a damn good job. We're 10 games over 500, and you said it, our bullpen, it's in the top half of the league. It's top 5. It's a good bullpen without good pieces. It's amazing, and that's Gabe Kapler and Chris Young. Let's give Chris Young some credit.
Yeah, and like with other teams who are having issues with their bullpen, they actually have the established pieces that went into the season with, in large part. And we just, like you just listed off, there's 5 or 6 guys injured, plus Pat Neshek, which I guess whatever you want to say, injured, whatever you want to call him. But that we gave money to him, we gave money to Robertson. The people we gave money to aren't even healthy right now.
Yeah,
or performing.
again, for me, I look at Gabe Kapler and I consistently say it's very Robert Covington-esque for me in terms of argumentative points. All these things that we wanted Groko to improve in, he did, but it still wasn't enough for the fans. At the end of the day, Philadelphia is this kind of a fan base that it's not going to matter how good or bad this team is, or excuse me, let me rephrase. It's not going to matter because Kapler is always going to be the punching bag for these people until he wins a World Series here, and then he'll be Doug and can do almost no wrong for at least 3 weeks of the regular season. That's just Philadelphia, and it's frustrating because they're wrong. He is a strong manager, and he has made adjustments from year one into year two, and it's incredibly evident because of what he's doing, especially with the bullpen and the pitching.
Agreed. It's without a doubt he's doing the best he can with such limited resources at this point. So we have to respect him for whatever he's bringing to this team at this point. And the example of Robert Covington is great. I know we're getting into Berube and Schenn later. It's similar situation, I think, because Berube and Schenn, he was a 5th round pick, and we expected, he's coming over, he's gonna be a stud, he's gonna be like Giroux or Couturier, but obviously these instances happen. And so I think that Kapler's doing the very best that he can with, like what you said, with just AAA and AA players. At this point, we just called whatever his name is. He's got the coolest name ever, Hammer, up from AA. So we're skipping AAA and going to AA because we've depleted AAA bullpens right now. So.
You know, Berube and Schenn was 5th overall, right? Not 5th round.
Oh, yeah. I thought I said 5th overall. I do know he was.
I'm just making sure, because otherwise we were going to have to boycott the Flyers thing so that you could prepare appropriately.
No, I meant 5th overall.
I was going to let it go, and I was like, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Thanks for correcting me. I might have said it later on, too.
Yeah, no problem. 5th overall, which is why Philly's so pissed at him, by the way. But to sum things up, Connor, your official stance here on the Ant San Philly and the broad Philadelphia Phillies Twitter take of Kapler deserving blame for the state of the bullpen. What do you got for us?
I just got patience. You got to have patience with this team, especially in regards to health. Like I said, the bullpen's in better shape than the fans give it to be, and they just see one big blow night, and they think that's the be-all to end-all and that the bullpen's the worst in the league. Newsflash, it isn't. It's actually in the top third of the league, and we just need to, if all the pieces can come back and round out and be who they're supposed to be, with Vinny V added into the mix, I think we could have the best bullpen in due time.
I think that is a really aggressively positive take, and I approve. Especially because you used the word patience, which is something I typically preach and you typically argue me at. So I'm just in awe that you've used it. But my official stance on the Ant San Philly and the Philadelphia Phillies Twitter debate and argument of Kapler's use of the bullpen is you all eat ass. This guy is doing the right things with the pieces that he has. He is putting every single pitcher, whether they are starters transitioning into the bullpen, whether they are bullpen pitchers that are going to have to give spot starts, whether they are closers who are not closing or people who are being asked to close, like Juan Nicasio. Juan Nicasio is the exception, like an Alvarez. He is putting everyone in their best position to succeed more often than not. Is it perfect? No. But is he to blame? Absolutely not. So Philadelphia Phillies, again, we try to start most of these shows with whatever the most relevant topic to our current time when we're recording is. And again, this one has been something that has been kind of beating at Philadelphia Phillies Twitter for a while. So the next one, it's going to seem weird that we transition to an offseason team now, but we are going to do it mainly because I don't know what happened to Giannis in Milwaukee. I would have put money that they would have won in 4 or 5 games in this series. But Toronto is going to the NBA Finals, and that is absurd to me because we are the better team. I tweeted
it earlier today, actually. I said Nick Nurse is the king of adjustments because whatever he did to really shut down Giannis and to put the right people on him, he saved the series. by whatever he did to stop Giannis. I know it's not all the coach, it's the player too, but you have to think that there was some adjustments made, making sure the right person was on him at the right times.
I just think Giannis is limited. And I think that the 76ers would have given them a much better series, just similar to what to Toronto. And I think that the 76ers would be representing the East, had that goddamn shot not fallen. But because we are in the offseason, because of a four-clank or quadruple doink, is that what we're calling it? Quadruple doink Kawhi shot to brutally end our season, we are forced to evaluate the offseason. And WIP's own Ike Reese, who, by the way, is dog shit at his job. I have never seen anyone agree with more things. And we talked a little bit, Connor, before this segment started. I know we're rambling a bit to get into this one, but this is important to me. We both listened to the Art of the Take pod. And I know this was your first listen. And one thing that stood out to you was the fact that they just stick home on their points. Doesn't matter, what argument comes against, they stick home and they keep moving the goalposts, is the expression they use in that show. Ike Reese is the opposite of that. Ike Reese will agree with no matter what else is on the other end of that conversation. So he drives me goddamn crazy. So to me, he's WIP's punching bag. So it's only appropriate that we use a tweet like this from him. But he has brought it in. If he is Elton Brand, Butler on a 3-year, $90 to $95 million deal, Harris on a 4-year, $80 to $85 million deal. Move on from JJ unless he's taking a 2 to 3 year deal for $10 million or less. Mike Scott, a good bench guy, 3 years, $15 million. Find a veteran point guard with playoff experience, and then Brett Brown has a 2 to 3 year window to get a championship. So there is a lot of information in this take. It's basically just how they are going about their offseason and what his expectations, and if he was Elton Brand, what he would do. Connor, you're going to have to start this one because I'm going to throw my phone at the stupidity of this entire take. Connor, go for it.
Oh, yeah, I agree. He takes whatever side is going to make him popular on Twitter, I think, because he just loves to get the retweets or something. I don't know what it is.
It's just non-confrontational.
No, he doesn't like to do a take. He doesn't like to give a take. And well, like you said, I was listening there to the take this morning. He's like, where is sports media going? The take is disappearing. All we have is like ESPN doesn't even have much of a take anymore beyond Stephen A. Smith. And then you go over and there's Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd, who are the kings of takes. You love to hate those people because their takes are so crazy. But this is just so basic. This Ike Reese statement is so basic. It's that typical run it back tweet. But let's get this straight. What pisses me off about the run it back tweets that I'm seeing from all these fans is, let's run it back, but. So you don't want to run it back. That's what you're saying. Don't put but. You want to run it back. You want to run it back with everything the same way as it stood. So first of all, let's start off. That's the most annoying thing this offseason is people saying, run it back, but let's do this, but let's do that.
Well, hold on. That run it back thing is about the core of those pieces. We're not saying let's run it back with TJ McConnell, even though he's the namesake of our podcast. We're saying let's run it back with Jimmy. Let's run it back with Tobias. Let's run it back even with JJ, who at this point could become the sixth man. It's not saying we're going to bring back Greg freaking Monroe. I think you're taking that overly literally.
I would hope that we don't bring back Monroe because
you don't want Greg Monroe for the Greg Monroe game once out of every 12 starts.
That hurt me. You know what? When that Monroe signing happened, I was like, why didn't we just go for Cantor when he was let go, when he was waived? I wanted Cantor personally, but I dig the guy. He's such a physical guy. But maybe I am taking it literally, but I also am not. I don't love the idea of running back the core completely, because to run back the core might affect us having an ability to address the depth pieces and get in that veteran or that helpful center who can help Embiid during the year and stuff. But I see all over Twitter as well the tweets about Butler and Harris, and I saw one that stood out to me that said, if we bring back Butler, bring back Harris. If we don't bring back Butler, don't bring back Harris. Or Harris isn't worth what we think he is, which I actually tend to agree with. Because, we have to remember Harris is, 27 years old. He's bounced between teams. He's never proven an overly consistent player. I think it's essential you get Butler back at any cost, whether or not that means you sacrifice Harris. And maybe love it or hate it, but my final take on it was run it back, but move on from Harris. I honestly would rather JJ over Harris at this point, because JJ at least could hit the shots when we needed him to hit the shots, despite maybe missing like 10 before that. But and then get Butler back at
They're different players. They provide different strengths.
They are different players, but I mean, look at the way Harris played during the playoffs besides a couple of reasonably good games. Do you want a player like that back? A guy who doesn't bring enough consistency to the game? Because I don't find he brought enough consistency.
Well, you said it yourself. His career has been masked by inconsistency. He's constantly on the move. He's rotating teams. Different coaches have coached him throughout even part seasons at different stops. Players are being moved around constantly. Even in Philadelphia, he played less than a dozen games with the guys he was going to share the floor with 40 minutes a night.
Which is fair, but are you seriously going to say that we're going to give this guy a max deal?
I would
want to
not
give this guy a
him
max deal. Because that's kind of the take that Ike Reese took, is that to give this guy a max deal. If you have to give Harris a max deal, but you're not getting Butler back, you got to do whatever it takes to get Butler back and just live without Harris, despite the draft capital and the capital that we gave up to get him here. But I think we need to address who's behind Embiid during the season so that he can rest adequately. Look what the rest did for Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard rested every fourth or fifth game, but look what it did. Yeah, he's in pain now, but look at what it did for him in the playoffs. He's coming out and he's putting up 30 almost every single night, almost more than 30 every single night, and putting in the minutes. Embiid came in unhealthy, and he came in hurt, and he came in, and we gave him every 10 games off. But what happens if we have the piece we need that he can get every 4 or 5 games off and get the adequate rest they need so they can rest his knee and get in condition for this so that he can go out and play 40 minutes a night and put up the points? So I think we need to address that. We need to address a reliable backup point guard. Unfortunately, like we said for TJ McConnell, that's not him, sadly. Great cheerleader, though. Great cheerleader. I'd love to bring him back if only for that. And then just get in a
he can take Monty Williams' job.
Yeah, he could do that. He could just sit there and cheer and hold a clipboard. Brown advice. Yeah, hold the clipboard. Oh, I mean, he wouldn't do as well holding a clipboard. He's got to put it down so he can truly be the cheerleader. But hold it when he's not cheering. And I think we need to.
Well, our first round draft pick will be hurt this year, undoubtedly. He can hold the clipboard for TJ. TJ can look over, reference the clipboard, then still cheer and have both hands available to him. See, I got it all mapped out.
I mean, I'm hoping Elton Brand has learned from the past mistakes. If they have an injury history, just let him pass. Let him go to the next team who wants to take that risk. We've taken enough risks, i.e., Markelle Fultz, Simmons' injury season, Embiid's injuries. We don't need any more of those. But if we address the depth behind Embiid and a reliable backup guard and really get a true sixth man like your Jamal Crawford, for example, I think we're in a lot better situation. Patrick Beverly. We could move on from Harris. I'm saying if the be all end all is to give him a max, we can move on from that. But Ike Reese's tweet is just so Twitter friendly, so exactly what everybody wants, which we all know from so many like postseason stuff that just doesn't work out in Philly's favor. It just doesn't. You don't get the perfect offseason. So you're not going to get that perfect offseason. You're not going to get that perfect tweet.
So when I read this tweet, I sat here and I thought to myself, I could plug in NBA 2K19. I could turn off the AI for trade intelligence, and it still would not allow me to construct a team in this manner. A pop-up alert would come up and say, you're goddamn crazy. Jimmy Butler is not accepting what he has him accepting. Jimmy Butler said, fortunately, I think no matter where I go, I should be offered a max contract. He's obviously looking for that. Don't you dare sit there and say, hey, we're going to give you 3 years. Get the hell out of here. You've just walked Jimmy out the door. You said it. I agree. Jimmy Butler is number one priority. You need him in this city. You need him in that locker room. You need him sitting there and continuing to mentor Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. That is priority number one. And if you walk into a meeting and you say, hey, Jimmy, we'd like to give you $95 million over 3 years, I hope Jimmy slaps the shit out of you. That's what I hope happens.
Jimmy won't even justify with a slap. He'll just go to L.A.
Yeah, absolutely. And so don't insult this man. So you're living in a goddamn insane universe for sitting there and saying that. In a perfect world, I absolutely would sign Tobias Harris for 80 to 85. However, I don't know that gets that done. Honestly, I think that he's up for what can he get? I think it's 5 years, 128, something like that.
Somebody will give him the money. Someone will see his worth.
Someone's going to give him a max. But what we have to hope for is that his experience in Philadelphia and the winning culture that is being bred in this city and bred in that particular locker room for the 76ers is enough for him to take a little bit of a discount. The problem is, and you mentioned it, when you trade 2 first-round picks and your first-round pick from that year, your later first-round pick in Landry Shamet, to LA for that, you've basically said, we are going to overspend for you in this offseason. We're committed to bringing you back. So I don't think it's realistic that Harris is going to go in there and accept 4 years, $20 million a year after he just had a contract worth 5 years for averaging $17 million a year. He's going to be in that $22 to $25 million range, and I don't think he gets less than 5 years. I just don't see any way that happens. And I think that other teams will know that we have to overpay for him. And I think that they will force us to do so. So I think it's unrealistic there. I would not move on from J.J. Redick. He frustrates me to no end. I think he frustrates everyone in Philadelphia, but what his veteran presence is, you need him there. And just like you mentioned, for a guy who could go 0 for 10 from the field, he will still pull up with his 11th shot as if he made the first 10, and he will still confidently put it up there. And if it's in a crucial moment of the game, I'm confident that he hits that shot. So you pay JJ. The problem is he's not taking a 2 to 3 year deal worth less than $10 million. The man made 2 years ago for his first year as a 76er, he made $23 million for a 1 year contract. Came back, made $12.5 million for a 1 year contract. Arguably had a better year, his second year, at least the first half of the year, than he had in his previous. I don't think you get that done for less than $10 million. To me, I would say 2 years, $26, $27 million, and maybe you front load this first contract or first year of it. The second year, you pay him the 12.5 that he made again this year. Either way, he is not taking $8 million a year, even at 35 years old or whatever he is. Mike Scott, I'm fine with the 3 years for $15 million. The backup point guard, obviously, is important, but just like you mentioned, he left out the number one need. Number one, you need to get someone who can play behind Joel Embiid. Whether you're drafting someone there, which he didn't leave that out in this long text or tweet, or you're going out via free agency or trade market or what have you. You have to address that. You cannot have a Joel Embiid who has an injury history and he's look, at the end of the day, he's 7'2". Those guys, those bodies just don't work the ways that 6'3" guys do, 6'6" guys do. It's tough. Too much in this tweet is so living in this false universe of everything can work out for Philadelphia.
It's like you said it. It's like playing a video game.
It is.
Just turning everything off. This is what he wanted. A dream scenario where like not even the players ever saying it. Just he says this and it just goes through.
Exactly. And again, for me, I sit here and I want to make this clear. First of all, if Elton Brand could make that Ike Reese tweet work, he would be a fucking magician. He would be Howie Roseman on intellectual steroids. It's never going to happen. I would love for it to happen because it's ideal. You get the 3 years that are going to be the good 3 out of the 5 years that you would get on that Butler max here in Philadelphia for $30 million. That's fine. Then he's off the cap. You would get Tobias Harris for only the 4 years brings him to 31 years old, 30 or 31 years old. Everything would be perfect, but here's the problem. It's too perfect, and it's never going to work. So, Ike, while I love your La La Land brain, I think you're a moron that you actually believe that is a conceivable possibility, and why you filled people's brain with that in Twitter. You're freaking crazy, man. I just don't get it. You have to look at these things logically, and you didn't. And that's a failure. And those are the people that sit there and instill the ideas and thoughts, because no one in today's world formulates their own opinions. Everyone immediately goes to the people that they follow on every social media platform, and whatever Billy, Bobby, Sally, Joe, whomever they follow says, that is what formulates their opinion. And you're the jackass that puts these thoughts into people's brains. So if Jimmy Butler signs here for a max, someone's going to be pissed that he didn't sign here only for 3 years because your dumbass said so. I'm so brutally angry at some of the people in sports media and Philadelphia sports media for putting this nonsense out there that it's a possibility, because it's freaking not. Connor, your final thought on this particular 76ers idea and tweet.
I think it's more or less just Philadelphia's media, because I think I can agree with Colin Cowherd more than I can deal with Ike Reese, or agree with, or even begin to have similar sentiments as what Ike Reese feels, and Giglio and all those guys. They're crazy.
Giglio, that was awesome.
It's craziness what some of these people think. So I mean, I think there's some important need to be addressed this offseason, and you definitely we're going to lose some pieces, and it's bound to happen, and we're not going to get the perfect scenario and the perfect storm. But on the bright side, Harris has agreed he would do anything to keep what he needed to keep to win, even if that means going into the luxury tax. So if this is true, then Elton Brand basically has a blank check in front of him with Harris's signature at the bottom, and he's being told to get it done and to get a championship. So on the bright side, all these max deals and all these crazy ideas that we're having and we have running through our head, it might not actually be crazy. It might actually happen, especially if it's true what Harris said.
Well, I do think, the 76ers are an incredibly profitable organization, and they're a winning organization right now. And they have two very uniquely talented, very young superstars that are under team control for a bit. Now is the time to splurge. Now is the time to test that luxury cap. And you're right. And none of this may actually matter, because if you want something and you have the deep pockets to get it, you will find a way to get it. And at the end of the day, if we can offer something, a more secure winning environment in Philadelphia, and we offer the same contract that LA offers to Jimmy Butler, and he goes to LA, look, you did what you did. It would have been the same situation with Bryce Harper. If we offered him all this money and he just chose to go and play for a dog shit baseball team somewhere because he liked the weather, well, at a certain point, your organization did everything you can. The organization, management, ownership, and Elton Brand and Brett Brown, they will do whatever it takes to put this team in the position to succeed and to have consistency behind him. Brett Brown doesn't have consistency to a roster ever as a head coach. We don't know what kind of head coach he truly is because he's constantly adapting. You talk about Nick Nurse adapting to competition. Imagine how fucking difficult it is to adapt to your own goddamn personnel every other week. This offseason's incredibly critical, and I do think they will do whatever it takes to find the pieces that they believe will most set them up for a championship window of the next 3 to 5 years.
Oh, definitely. And you have to at this point. It's been so long. People are calling for Brett Brown's job. People are basically going to be ready to ride outside the Wells Fargo if they don't do the right thing and just give the money that they're owed. If they're owed a max, if they're owed a super max, you just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And again, I think a big thing is the fact that they struck out everywhere in the offseason last year, and they understand that free agency is not a given. They know this is incredibly critical. So if they have to overspend for a guy like Tobias Harris, who, by the way, I still think when you bring Tobias Harris back, you have a guy like Joel Embiid, who what was the one thing we wanted from Joel Embiid offensively throughout the entire playoffs? We wanted him to play inside. Where was he? 3-point line. Why? No one on the team could shoot. No one could shoot. And you willingly want to say a guy that we acquired, spent 2 first-round picks on Landry Shamet to get, who can freaking shoot the basketball, and we want to ship him away or not offer him a contract because he's a little too expensive? The hell out of here. That devalues a superstar center. It devalues Ben Simmons, who also will not shoot. You need to surround the other 3 players on the court need to be knockdown shooters from everywhere on the floor. Tobias Harris offers that. And the management knows that. He's going to get offered a contract here.
Yeah, let's not forget that Ben Simmons has to learn to shoot a damn basketball this offseason.
For fuck's sake, man.
This rebuild
better.
means so little if we continue to have to be subjected to a guy who he doesn't even pump fake. That's how unconfident he is. He doesn't even pump fake. At least Embiid pump fakes and he might get someone jumping. If you pump fake and you're Ben Simmons, people will laugh at you because they know. So instead, pull up for a shot when they give you the space next year and just hit it. Just like even me, my scrawny ass who is so unathletic could probably hit a 3-pointer on an NBA basketball court. So please, how hard is it to get to learn how to shoot a basketball?
I don't know. Fire your brother and we'll see. I think if any other competent person comes in there and works with this shot, probably in a good way. LJ actually brought that up, and in Cap We Trust, why we were talking about Sixers basketball with LJ and on a baseball show, I don't remember, but somehow we got there. And it is true. His brother
because
is his shot
loves
coach.
to pick at the Sixers right now. So
He's
he'll take
asshat.
any episode of anything to bring that up.
By the way, middle of this segment seems like a decent opportunity to sit there and work in a semi-commercial here. You guys have a wrestling segment that's about to come out. Before we transition into a Flyers take, you guys have a new show, UNL. Why don't you tell us about that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna kind of lean away from Philadelphia sports and give the Always Next Year podcast a new identity. We're going to start hosting before and after pay-per-views a WWE based podcast, and it's called The People's Take in honor of the People's Elbow, The Rock's finishing move, and also in response to the outcry by WWE fans to listen to them to make the WWE great. So that's going to start. I believe we're going to record our first episode this Wednesday, leading into the Super Show that's on Friday night. So you'll definitely have to check that out if you're into wrestling or just for fun anyways. Why not?
Yeah, look, you may end up finding something that you never enjoyed before. I myself have not watched wrestling since I was like 10, but I have to listen to all our segments since I edit them. So I will. If you guys are interesting enough, I very well may become a wrestling fan. But yeah, so we are excited about that. So for anyone who does like the WWE or whatever wrestling is now, give The People's Take a listen when Connor and Elle start putting that show out. We are pretty excited about branching out to something beyond just the Philly sports market. So good idea by both of you guys there. Getting back into the Crossing Borders here. So this one is from Kerry. He is very, very well known in Flyers Twitter. And I do also, Kerry, I actually don't know if you listen to this show, but we interact quite often on Twitter for Flyers takes and Phillies takes and things like that. Kerry's mom just beat cancer. So a big, big congratulations to him, her, their entire family. That's always super, super great to hear when someone, beats such a just awful, awful disease. So again, to your family, congratulations. And also congratulations on a very good tweet. So Kerry brought us a conversational tweet. It goes, Flyers fans, fuck Schenn and fuck Berube. In response, real Flyers fans, best of luck to both Schenn and Berube. He went on to say in several additional tweets that, you can be both. You can dislike the player when they're in your building as an opponent. but at a certain point they both gave to your organization at a certain point in time, and neither of them particularly left the organization, with these terrible tastes in their mouths because of personality. It was more so performance. And Philadelphia is pretty known for being unnecessarily critical and harsh to their former athletes and coaches, and their additional success in the years beyond their time in Philadelphia. So, Connor, I feel like we may have a little bit different take on this one, which should be good, unless I'm misrepresenting or misunderstanding each of our takes on this. But why don't you start us off here on Carey's tweet?
Okay, well, I have a lot of respect for current and past Flyers players and coaches. I believe it's all about opportunity and situation. And I think Schenn and Berube got the perfect storm, opportunity and situation. I mean, when Berube came in, I remember seeing the tweet just a while ago that Berube took over the Flyers in a similar state as the St. Louis Blues. Similar time frame, similar points, similar position.
I think they were 29th and 30th.
Yep, similar everything. So I'm really happy for Berube because in the last decade, you know what? I think coaches come to die in Philadelphia. The past few coaches just seem to come back just to die. They just come here for that. I don't believe he was given what he needed to succeed in big example, the goalie situation, which we finally have addressed. But it also speaks, I think, to the players and their willingness to be coached and their willingness to play through adversity. Because the St. Louis Blues were in a similar situation that Berube took over in Philadelphia, and he was able to get these players to turn it around and become a team and play as a team through the adversity of being in such a poor situation. So I think that it kind of speaks to that willingness to be coached and to play through the adversity. And Berube got the team willing to do that, unlike the Flyers that he took over that year. And I think for us, the big thing that pisses us off about Schenn is that he was the fifth pick in the draft. Fifth pick, not round.
There you go.
I mean, the guy has 372 points in 587 career games. He's not a standout player. And I think that when we acquired him, that was what we expected. There was too much pressure in Philadelphia for him. And in St. Louis, it was a fit. He was surrounded by guys who, there were some better guys than him. There were a lot of guys who were on his level.
He was surrounded by incredibly talented players in Philadelphia.
I don't deny he was surrounded by talent. I just think that we expected more from him than what he could give us. And when he went to St. Louis, that wasn't the same. You don't see the St. Louis fans bashing him for putting up 50, I think it was 57 points in 72 games. If he was in Philadelphia and he put that number up as the fifth pick in a draft, I feel like you would get ripped for not being a point per game player. Because we're Philadelphia. That's just the situation he was in. I don't
necessarily think it's specifically tied to his overall point production. It was a streaky guy. He was the streakiest hockey player I've seen in decades. But look at who we traded for him. That is where this all stems from. We had a fan favorite here in Philadelphia in Mike Richards, and we get Wayne Simmons, a draft pick or two, and Berube and Schenn. And Berube and Schenn was the kind of the highlight of that trade as a former fifth overall pick. We were replacing our captain. We were replacing the pulse of our organization for a very short period of time there. We expected much better than what we got because of what we gave up.
Agreed, but that's like, that has to speak to the evaluation that the Flyers gave of this guy, and you're willing to go out there and risk that the type of moves that Richards and Simmons ended up turning into an equally fan favorite player out of all this, the pleasant surprise of the entire situation. But that speaks to how you evaluated the player as well as from the franchise's perspective. And so we can't completely blame Schenn because maybe Schenn just never was meant to pan out, and we just evaluated him as a lot higher than he was. And so, I mean, I think they just, like I said, the opportunity and situation. They both came in to the perfect opportunity and situation, not a lot of pressure, and this is what happens. They're in the finals. I would love. I'm rooting for them because I hate Boston. Who doesn't?
That's exactly.
Philadelphia. But I'm not sold that they're actually gonna be able to beat Boston, because Boston that's a powerhouse right there. They're so, you hate them, but they're good. They're good.
They do everything
they're good
right.
at hockey. They do it all right. They have the right goalie. They have the right goal scorers who consistently perform. It's just how it is. And they have the depth. When they traded for Charlie Coyle, I was like, holy shit. Like, he'd plug in at such a different spot in Philadelphia than where they're going to end up plugging him in their role. So I think the St. Louis Blues, my final take on it is that the St. Louis Blues are proof that the Flyers players need to show a willingness to play through adversity and be coached, and we can be in a similar situation as this year's Blues next year. I don't think that the Flyers are that far off. And you know what? To go back to it all, I respect Schenn and I respect Berube more than Schenn, but I think that we're not that far off. We're there. We have I think we have the right coaching staff in place. We have dependent on this offseason, we have the right players in place. I mean, look at the young talent we have coming up in Frost and Ratcliffe. Like, we have everything we need to succeed. I think it just goes back to the willingness to play through adversity, to be coached, to give up the first couple goals and not realize that, oh my God, this is the end of the game, and giving up. Having Carter Hart, I think we're in a similar situation as them. And it just so happened that their situation turned out leaps and bounds better than our situation this past year.
So I'm taking a slightly different approach to this particular take. I wholeheartedly sit there and I sit there and say, hold on one second. Sorry, I had like 14 texts coming in there in a row. Different approach here. For me, I sit there and I say, again, moving Mike Richards for a guy like Braden Schenn, like Wayne Simmons, and I got to put this phone down. It's just going to keep going off. You take a look at what was moved there. It's hard, and he's already put in that position to say, hey, you need to be the guy. We gave away our captain for you. We're putting a lot of trust. Obviously, that's tough to fill. What I'm going to choose to sit there and take at this is, and again, Berube was the same way. Berube came into a shit show and actually had I think it was his first season or second season was really good. But I'm going to sit there and take this fan perspective instead. You can both, and this actually goes to a separate Carey tweet, which I can't find the specific one. I kind of alluded to it earlier. You can hate Craig Berube, and I do, and you can hate Braden Schenn, and I do. And you can still sit there and support them in the playoffs because at a certain point they donned a Flyers sweater. Neither one of them did anything so egregiously bad here or said anything about their time in Philadelphia that would sit there and sit so poorly with me that I would wish them ill will of any kind. I would obviously want them to have success. And you mentioned that they're going up against Boston. Who better to beat outside of maybe Pittsburgh for them to go up against in this Cup final right now, and for me to say, yes, I'd like to support Braden Schenn and Craig Berube and the Blues before I go ahead and support them. Philadelphia Flyers, or Philadelphia fans in general, get such a bad rap about so many different things. One of the things, they say, former athletes come back and they're torched for what they do or the decisions they make beyond their times in Philadelphia. Jason Worth is my favorite go-to. He signed a contract that we were never going to give him. How can you fault this man? He didn't do anything wrong. Now, he didn't say the best of things beyond his time here, but we immediately faulted him for going to Washington for money versus championships in Philadelphia. Well, why? We would all do the same goddamn thing. Philadelphia fans get put into a bubble that is the only way that we respond. Do you know that there is a bar in Philadelphia right now that has converted itself to a Blues fans only bar? A bunch of Flyers fans, Philadelphia sports fans, have purchased dozens of merchandise material, jerseys, shirts, hats, scarves, whatever the hell they're going into this bar with, specifically blue and gold, to represent the Blues and to support Craig Berube and Braden Schenn? Do
I
you know
did
that's
not know.
actually happening right now?
I did not know that, but I am from Canada, so I don't really know what's going on in Philadelphia beyond the sports that I see on TV. But
it's been on Twitter. That's where I found it. So I didn't know if it reached itself to you. But Philadelphia fans can endear their former athletes. We can hate them while they play this game. We hated Eric Lindros for the way that he left. Do you remember what it was like? I don't know if you saw any of the highlights from his jersey retirement ceremony in Philadelphia. There was nothing but cheers. Nothing but cheers for a guy who didn't fucking deserve it.
I think it's when they retire and come back, or
of course
people realize after the fact, then they'll cheer for them. But they would boo the hell out of those people if they came back and played in that same arena in a different jersey.
If they're playing against us, we have every right to sit there and treat them as hostile as possible. That's just what you do in any visiting arena or any visiting teams coming to your home arena. That's what you do. That's fine. But to sit there and say that you blatantly do not, I don't know about you. I still, when I check scores at the end of every single night throughout every sport that we watch, I go back and look at some of my favorite Flyers or favorite Phillies or favorite Eagles or favorite Sixers, from times, and I take a look and see how they did, on any given night on games that I didn't get the opportunity to watch. I still check Andre Iguodala's numbers almost on a nightly goddamn basis. He was one of my favorite Sixers. All these things happen. We can hate the player, but we still at some point appreciate what they did here, even if it wasn't to the level of expectation that we had. And when Braden Schenn undoubtedly retires and he decides to retire as a Flyer, which he I'm sure will do, he's going to come back and we're going to shower him with applause. Even when he comes back as a visitor, they're going to play a 60-second video clip in the second intermission at some point, and he's going to get cheers. Philadelphia does it right. We just consistently get these people on Twitter, these loudmouth people on Twitter that want to sit there and say, "Go fuck yourself. You're a terrible fucking coach."
They just give all us fans a bad look.
Exactly.
They just love to hate. Exactly.
So to me, I'm not necessarily taking the player and the coach can be interchangeable with X, Y, or Z in any sport at any time throughout all of Philadelphia sports history. This to me is a tweet that is dedicated at the way that fans react to former players of their city having success and finding success beyond their time in Philadelphia. We do not all react as poorly as Twitter lets us out to be, and I think that Carrie's 100% correct. At a certain point, this is wrong. Your final stance on Carrie's tweet here.
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. It just speaks to the contradiction that Philadelphia fans, or some of the Philadelphia fans sport or Philadelphia fan base is. And I mean, there's certain people who rightfully so will never have the respect of fans, and I think Markelle Fultz probably is one that will probably never have the respect of fans. But I hope that if Jimmy Butler chooses to go to LA or chooses money over us, that when he returns, that we give him the respect he deserves, because he did so much for this team in just half a season. That it's just, to think that fans would treat someone this way, or would treat former players this poorly, is sad to see, because they didn't pan out in Philadelphia and they found success elsewhere. And even from a coaching perspective, same thing. You can't hate people who tried for us. They gave it their all for us, for whether it be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You got to show some respect to these people for what they did for the franchises.
Well, I thought we were going to sit there and disagree on this one, and we did not. So naturally, I am again going to sit there and state, we can do better as fans. That being said, we are nowhere near as bad as what Twitter will make us out to be. I think that our aggression towards players, like me and Steve loathe both Berube and Schenn. I don't think either one of us are going to be unhappy if by some miracle they beat the powerhouse Boston Bruins. So again, Carrie, good tweet, always brings good content. And again, congratulations to you, your mother, your family. Always really, 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 really good to hear when someone beats that awful disease.
Absolutely. I agree.
So Joe Giglio is the founder of the author of our final tweet here, and it's about Philadelphia Eagles football. It only makes sense to end with this one, considering these are topics you guys hit on the last Kelly Green Hour, you and LJ. So the tweet here is, the Eagles spend the offseason building an offense that should get big leads, and a pass rush suspect enough to give it all back versus good quarterbacks. Graham, Cox, Jackson, Barnett off shoulder surgery, Curry not an effective pass rusher any longer, Jernigan, Sweat, Miller, and a practice squad player or two. There's a lot of information here, but the gist of this tweet is suggesting that our front four and the depth of our front four is inadequate, and that we cannot get consistent pressure, and that our secondary will fail, and that our leads that would potentially happen from our offense will not be large enough. Giglio is a punching bag of mine as well, so I'm going to let you start with this, and then I'll beat the hell out of him for it afterwards. Connor, your tweet. You are the Philadelphia Eagles guy of this podcast. Give it a go.
Yeah, I love to make him the punching bag as well, because I think he you know what, for the punching that we do, he gives us takes. He gives Philadelphia takes.
But he tries to. That's the thing. He's such a weenie. What a weird dude, man. I don't know. To me, you know how like LJ just nags at us for being Sixers fans just because he can, because he's got to be the little weasel asshole.
He's the same way.
That's basically Joe Giglio, which is hilarious because he basically is the same person and he hates Giglio. But anyway,
ironic,
these guys,
yeah.
But what they do, they're very good at. LJ provides us with content. Joe Giglio provides us with content. Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd, they all provide us with content. Anyway, continue.
I think that I disagree. I think he's referencing more the defensive end situation. I completely disagree. And we talked about it, as you said, on the last Kelly Green Hour. I think that the defensive ends are going to be just fine because we have a monster interior defensive line. I mean, to think that you could even question Jackson and Cox and Jernigan, and obviously it tapers off a bit after that, but to have those three guys, to know that those are your first three guys on the interior of the defensive line, and to think that you'd be concerned with the ends, who are Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett, is crazy. It's outrageous. I think that because of how strong the interior of the defensive line will be, there will be more emphasis on stopping Jackson and stopping Cox from getting to the quarterback, that it will inevitably lead to double teams by the offensive line, opening up Derek Barnett or opening up Brandon Graham to get to the quarterback. I think the statement is just, it's so it kills me inside. Graham and Barnett healthy together, I think, will wreak havoc on the outside. I know that we talk about Barnett going, whatever, he's aging, he's on the wrong side of 30. Chris Long, you want to bring another guy back on the wrong side of 30, yet we all have the audacity to complain that we're bringing in veterans, but yet you're going to cry that we let Long go into retirement and let Barnett go to, well, the Patriots. I get why we're crying about that, but I mean, to let him go as well, it's just, I think the depth will provide them with the rest that they need to be able to wreak havoc. I think they're going to. I am high on Derek Barnett, and I think he will prove. I think he will prove this year why we picked him in the first round and why we took him with that pick. And Brandon Graham will prove why we gave him that contract extension, even though he's on the wrong side of 30 as well. I think my final take on this, because I don't think it requires a whole lot of discussion because of who it comes from, with a more mature, injury-free, fingers crossed, secondary and a monster interior defensive line, the offense will build monster leads week in and week out. And the only thing people will be saying about the ends is how many sacks did they have at the end of that game that week. That's my take on that situation. It's not worthy of more than a couple minutes. It's not worth hurting my heart or giving me health issues.
It's another Crossing Borders episode where we sit here and we agree on each one of these points. And I know that doesn't create the best of debates, but I do still find a sense of enjoyment beating the hell out of some of the take artists who do put things out here, and make no mistake about it. This is what Joe Giglio is. He is an artist. He is just out here trying to to facilitate this conversation, and he won because we're having it. So I will also only give a few minutes to this. To me, you said it specifically an attack on the edge rushers, the defensive ends. You cannot have one without the other. You can't have the conversation about the ends without having the conversation about the interior line. The interior line depth for us is great. How many times is Fletcher Cox going to have to get double teamed? A lot. Jackson, double teamed. Probably going to happen often. Timmy Jernigan coming in. That guy looks like he's on a mission as well this offseason. His interviews are hilarious. The three of those guys alone in the interior right there are so impressive. They're each going to command so much attention that it's going to sit there, and you're going to have to rely on keeping a tight end in to double one of those two ends. You're going to have to rely on running backs to constantly stay in the backfield to protect. You're eliminating options for these teams to go out. The safety net options, no less. Tight ends and running backs are safety net options that for a poor tackling team such as the Eagles, if tight ends and running backs are not getting the football, they're not getting first downs. They're not moving those chains. It's not going to happen. So I'm exactly like you. I sit there and I look at, Graham's an all-pro end. The way that he elevated his career in such a just methodical pace and fashion, that's a journey I love. And we've talked about that ad nauseum, my appreciation for Brandon Graham. Just like you, I'm a very, very big Derek Barnett guy. And Josh Sweat, both of them, when they were coming into the draft, they had a lot of NFL critics and analysts. They had a lot of college people saying how impressive their first step was, that speed they have, both with their feet and their hands. Both of those guys, if healthy and remaining healthy, they're going to have very, very good years, and especially the way that Schwartz likes to rotate these guys. That they're going to stay fairly fresh. And then again, bringing Jernigan back to play, as a third interior lineman, a rotational guy. He is an exceptional interior talent as well, and we brought him back for cheap to rotate with two very, very exceptional talents on the interior. I think Giglio's out of his goddamn mind. I think that at a certain point, you sit there as a take artist and you say, well, no one's low on this team right now, so let me try to bring this place back to reality by throwing out some bullshit. And that's exactly what he did. That, to me, is a garbage tweet and has no basis in conversation or chatter.
No, absolutely not. And, I mean, I know you say that he's referencing the entire defensive line, obviously, because you can't have one without the other. But if you're going to talk bad about Malik Jackson and Fletcher Cox, I mean, you should really consider a break from Twitter. You've clearly been on Twitter too much. You've clearly been reading some crazy stuff too much. And because you can't talk bad about those two guys. Fletcher Cox is one of the most appreciated Eagles, if not the most appreciated, and absolutely the best and most important piece of that defense. I just don't even want to think about the day when he's not in Philadelphia, unless we've found someone else equally as great to replace him. But that would be one hell of a job for Howie to take on, trying to find that replacement.
No, he's someone I'd like to see retire in an Eagles jersey for sure. For sure. So those are the four takes that we have. We like to remind everyone again. So one thing that I'm always very critical of is the fact that people are not very critical in their own right. They don't diagnose things in their own assessment. Everything that Connor says, everything that I say, these are things that we see, and then we have people that we trust to provide the information to us to support our claims, support our takes, support what our eyes see. Everyone should formulate their own opinions in sports and in everything. Going out there and blanketly trusting a statement that you have not yourself bear witness to first is moronic. So when you come up with these good tweets and these good ideas and takes in your brain, and you go ahead out there and you tweet them out, be sure to use the hashtag #CrossingBorders ANYP. We want the unfiltered, we want the unimpressed tweets. We don't want things from the Skip Bayless, from this, from that. We love the originality. We want to know what your eyes see. I know what my eyes see. Connor knows what his see. That's what makes this particular segment fun. We utilize Twitter as a tool to support our claims. We utilize the internet as a tool. We utilize everything else as a tool as well. That's what makes Crossing Borders fun. So hold on one second. I know there's one more thing that we have to talk about. Oh, right. Second show. Connor, you and LJ did an awesome exercise activity that has been floating around Twitter about basically going through, I think it's like 8 to 10 one-player questions about most improved player, approve your player for your team MVP, just different shit like that. You guys did that in the Kelly Green Hour. It was awesome. You and I are actually going to be doing this for all 4 teams at some point. So be on the lookout for that episode. That was the last thing I needed to remember to state. So we are looking forward to that. I myself am looking forward to that. I have a ton of answers that are going to surprise people. So I'm looking forward to sitting there.
Disagree. I like that.
I know, and that'll be a rarity. This will be practice for us since we so rarely do disagree. So that'll be a fun segment. If you guys have any other segments such as that, or different ideas and concepts you guys would like us to work into our show, we're always open to those options. Again, you can always reach us on our Twitter. It's at ANY Podcast. You can reach either one of us at our personal individual Twitters. Mine is Shane_Mead. Connor, you are at Connor10.
TEN, yep.
Yes, Connor10 spelled out. Connor, do you have any final thoughts on today at all?
Nope, I think we're good. Just hoping for a sweep of Milwaukee today.
I too also hoping for that. That game is going on as we're recording right now, so I actually don't know what the status of that game is. But my final thought is the fact that, again, please do remember that we are going to be integrating another new segment. We are very excited about it. Connor and LJ will be bringing that to you on WWE Wrestling. Again, so if you are a fan of their Kelly Green Hour, they have very, very good chemistry. They'll be bringing something a little bit more lighthearted to the podcast in terms of what they're going to talk about there and pro wrestling and the entertainment industry and that. So we are very excited about that. And you said next Wednesday, you believe, or the following Wednesday, something like that?
This Wednesday. Wednesday.
Cool. So we will we'll have one of those segments up for you shortly as well. And we at Crossing Borders will have another episode out for you shortly on the topics we just discussed. Anything else, again, be sure to reach out to us. You can also reach out to us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. Connor, as always, sir, it has been a pleasure, and one day we will find out an effective way to end these segments because I have rambled for 7 minutes too long trying to close this thing out. So we're going to let the Jackdaws take over here, and we will see you guys next time.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a rib or two, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
This has been a production of the Always Next Year Podcast Network. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Spreaker, and SoundCloud. Please also remember to rate and review this podcast to validate our members' life choices. We appreciate it. This is ANYP, signing off.